Hey there, pirates. Welcome aboard the Anime No Me channel. We already know Shanks hiding a forbidden power, a devil fruit that turns him into a god, would be a revelation that flips the world of One Piece upside down. Let's dive into that in today's video. Shanks, the Yonko with a bounty of 4.048 billion in chapter 957, is a walking enigma. He didn't eat the Gomu Gomu no Mi, which he carried on his ship in chapter 1 before Luffy devoured it, but his strength is insane. In chapter 1054, he stops an admiral with supreme haki from miles away, and in chapter 1079, he destroys Kid and Killer with a single strike that splits the sky. The theory proposes that Shanks hides a divine Akuma no Mi, a forbidden power that places him on the same level as Luffy, as Sun God Nika in chapter 1044. If Luffy's fruit is the Hito no Mi, model Nika, guarded for 800 years by the world government in chapter 1044, why wouldn't there be other mythical fruits of gods? Shanks, who once had Nika's fruit in his hands, might have access to a secret network of legendary fruits, maybe tied to the Void Century in chapter 967, hiding one that makes him a god opposite or complementary to Luffy's son. Imagine Shanks with a fruit that turns him into a lunar god, of shadows, or even of the sea hidden because his power threatens the balance of the world, just as Imu fears Nika in chapter 1085. He keeps this secret even from his allies, like Beckman in chapter 957, because revealing divine power would draw the world government, Blackbeard, or even Luffy against him. It would be epic to see Shanks, with his calm smile, hiding a power that makes the seas tremble, only revealed in the final arc, maybe an Elbaf or Laugh Tale, when he faces Luffy or Imu. The idea is that Shanks has a mythical Akuma no Mi, like a Hito no Mi, model lunar god, or maybe something like a Umi no Mi, model Poseidon, turning him into a god with powers opposite or complementary to Nika. In chapter 1044, the Gorosei reveal that Nika is the god of freedom, and the Void Century in chapter 1115 mentions ancient wars with weapons like Pluton. If opposite gods existed in the past, like Sun versus Moon, or Land versus Sea, Shanks could have a fruit that balances or challenges Nika, hidden since he was a young pirate with Roger in chapter 967. He keeps it hidden because, like Luffy before Gear 5 in chapter 1044, awakening demands a price, maybe a physical sacrifice, like his lost arm in chapter 1, or a risk to the balance of the world, as Vegapunk fears in chapter 1114. The forbidden power could involve manipulating shadows, tides, or even time contrasting with Luffy's solar chaos. In chapter 1054, Shanks' supreme haki intimidates Ryokugyu, but what if it's more? A lunar god fruit could create darkness that swallows light, like Teach's Yami no Mi in chapter 441, but with divine control, erasing entire islands. Or a Poseidon fruit tied to the sea could control waves and sea kings, rivaling Shirahoshi in chapter 647. Shanks hides it to maintain balance, like he did when he stopped the war at Marineford in chapter 580, knowing that revealing his power would draw Imu or Blackbeard, who hunts fruits in chapter 577. Shanks is a master of discretion. In chapter 957, he's described as a world balancer, even meeting with the Gorosei. He doesn't use his fruit openly, relying instead on supreme haki and swordsmanship like in chapter 1079 against Kid, where his divine departure echoes Roger's style. The theory suggests he only activates this power in extreme moments, maybe an Elbaf against an enemy like Loki, or in the final confrontation with Imu. Picture Shanks with his black cloak activating a divine transformation, eyes glowing like moons, shadows swallowing the battlefield, or waves rising like mountains as he says, "Luffy, this power isn't meant to be used lightly, but you forced me to show it." His reluctance to use it might come from a vow, maybe made to Roger in chapter 968, to only awaken the fruit when the right one arrived Luffy, Joy Boy's heir. He hides it even from allies like Beckman or Yasop because the power is dangerous, like Vegapunk fears with Ohara's technology in chapter 1115. In chapter 434, Shanks refuses to fight for Whitebeard, showing he avoids unnecessary conflicts. A divine power would be his secret weapon, kept to protect balance until Luffy reaches Laugh Tale. It would be insane to see Beckman, upon finding out, say, "Captain, you even hid this from me?" That explains why the sea respects you. If Luffy is the sun god, then an opposite god makes sense in the lore. Nika's son in chapter 1. 1044 brings freedom and laughter. A lunar god could control darkness and silence, balancing Luffy's chaos. In chapter 888, The Minx Sulong transformation uses the moon for power, suggesting lunar forces exist in this world. Shanks with a Hito no Mi, model lunar god, could manipulate shadows or gravity, like Fujitora in chapter 701, but on a divine scale, snuffing out lights or creating eternal nights. Alternatively, a sea god fruit tied to Poseidon in the chapter 647 could let Shanks command oceans, summon tsunamis, or calm storms, just like he does at Marineford in chapter 580 to stop the war. That would make him the perfect counterpart to Luffy, with powers that reflect his calm against the Straw Hat's elastic chaos. In chapter 1158, God Valley ties into ancient secrets. Shanks, present there, could have found a divine fruit guarded by the celestial dragons. He hides it because, like Luffy's fruit in chapter 1044, it's watched by Imu, who fears gods of the Void Century in chapter 1085. Knowing this, Shanks relies on Haki to fight, reserving the divine power for a final moment, maybe against Blackbeard, who hunts mythical fruits in chapter 577, or Imu, who destroys islands with shadows in chapter 1060. It would be insane to imagine Luffy as the sun god in chapter 1045, facing Shanks as a lunar or sea god. In Elbaf, in chapter 1158, the two could meet, with Shanks revealing his power to test Luffy. Kid, you inherited the sun. Now see what the moon can do. The battlefield would turn into a spectacle, Luffy turning the ground into cartoon rubber, while Shanks summons darkness that swallows the sun or waves that challenge the Sea Kings. Luffy, laughing like Nika, would say, "Shanks, you're badass. Let's see who shines brighter." That duel would be epic, not out of hate, but out of respect, like Roger and Whitebeard in chapter 966, with two gods splitting the heavens. Shanks would hide his power until that moment to protect Luffy, just like he did when he gave him the Straw Hat in chapter 1, waiting for him to grow into Joy Boy. In chapter 1054, he is already watching Luffy from afar. Revealing a divine fruit would be his trump card to guide the kid toward the One Piece, maybe teaching him how to balance freedom with responsibility. It would be epic to see Luffy, after their duel, laugh, "Shanks, your power is crazy, but my sun won't go out." And Shanks smiling, "That's what Roger wanted, kid." Why would this be epic? This theory is incredible for several reasons. Shanks' mystery. Shanks is a Yonko with no known fruit, but his power is insane in chapter 1079. A divine fruit would explain his strength while keeping him mysterious until the end, just like Oda loves to do with figures like Imu in chapter 1085. Cosmic balance. Luffy as the sun. God needs a counterpart, a lunar or sea Shanks, creates a yin-yang dynamic, like the sun and moon of the Minx in chapter 888, raising the lore to mythological levels. Secrecy and sacrifice. Shanks, hiding his power, maybe because of a vow to Roger in chapter 968, adds depth. He sacrifices personal glory to protect the world, like when he stops Marineford in chapter 580, turning him into a tragic hero. Epic duel. A clash of gods Luffy's sun against Shanks' moon or sea would be visually insane, with cartoon rubber facing shadows or tsunamis, echoing Roger and Garp's clash in chapter 1158. Shanks with a divine fruit lunar god, sea god, or another forbidden power would be a twist that explains his strength and mystery. He hides it to protect the balance, like he does at Marineford in chapter 580, but he would reveal it in the final arc, maybe an Elbaf or against Imu, in a duel that makes Luffy's sun shine even brighter. It would be epic to see Shanks with his black cloak turn the battlefield into eternal night or a massive tsunami saying, "Luffy, the world isn't ready for two gods, but you are." This theory elevates Shanks to a mythological titan, with Luffy as his mirror, in a showdown that defines the future of One Piece. That was today's content. We hope you liked it and want to share your opinion on the subject. Don't forget to share the video, give it a thumbs up, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care and stay amazing.